Hi guys, this is Andrew with rockclass101.com and welcome to live lesson episode number. So I wanted to let you guys know that every second Monday of the month at 7 p.m. Eastern, we're going to be live streaming a lesson over at rockclass101.com. Now these live lessons are going to be hosted by Matt Dahlberg, and each month the topic will be different. So what's fun about the live lessons is that you're not only able to watch live, but you're also able to chat live. So you'll be able to chat with Matt and other Rock Class 101 members. So for more information on how to tune in, click this link right here or go to the site rockclass101.com and do a search for live lessons. Now on that page you'll also be able to watch every live lesson that we've done before. So if you've ever missed one, no worries, they're all there. Now, if you can't make the live stream, don't sweat it, because the day after the broadcast, we'll be publishing it to our YouTube channel. And to go one step further, on the first Monday of the month, which is 1 week before the broadcast, we're going to have a forum post up on the site, which will cover two things. Number one, what the topic for the month's live lesson will be about. And number two, you'll be able to post your questions ahead of time. So that's great news because you're still going to be able to participate. Now to post on our forum, all you have to do is sign up for basic membership, which is 100% free, and that will gain you the ability to post on our forums. All right guys, so I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Matt to teach this month's lesson, and I hope you guys enjoy it.
So today we're going to learn how to play with a band. Now this is a concept that's much bigger than this little lesson that we're doing, but hopefully this can help you get started if you never have before, or help get you more confident and comfortable if you've tried doing it before and just haven't felt like it's quite for you yet. So what we want to start with is just breaking down what's going on when you're jamming with a band or playing with people. And really what's happening is you essentially have three main parts, right? You have your melody, you have your harmony, and you have your rhythm. Now we've talked about these things in a previous live lesson and other things on Rock Class 101, so check those out in the links in the description below. But essentially we want to assume a different role as the player. So the first role that I think people want to assume is the harmony role, which is more in the background, playing the chords and trying to make sure things sound nice and rich, essentially. So when we're working with that, we want to get comfortable now with the concept of a chord progression. So if you look at the sheet on Rock Class 101 for this lesson, which you can check out, link below if you're watching this as a recording, you'll notice that there's on part A, it says a strumming pattern with 4 chords. For now, let's just focus on these 4 chords. These chords are a G chord, an E minor chord, a D chord, and a C chord. Now, if you don't know how to play these chords, that's okay. We're going to be talking about it. But if you don't know, I just want you to look at my hand here as I switch between these chords. You see how much movement I'm making? I'm making a lot of movement between each of these chords. So what I first want to do is I want to think, how should I play these chords to best fit my jam session? In this case, the G chord, normally we play a G chord something like this. Index on the 2nd fret of the C string, ring finger on the 3rd fret of the E, and the middle here on the 2nd fret of the A. But I don't want to do that because when I go to the E minor chord, I have to do something like this, and that's just too much work. So what we do instead is on the G chord, we bar across the 2nd fret of the C, E, and A strings, and add the middle finger here on the 3rd fret of the E string. And the reason for this is because it's the same chord, but now when I want to play the E minor chord, the next one, I just take this ring finger and I add it to the 4th fret of the C string, and I leave everything else where it is. And that gets me my E minor chord, the second one that I'm going to play. Now the 3rd chord of this is going to be a D chord. And instead of trying to play it with 3 fingers or something crazy like that, I'm going to take this index, I'm going to bar it now all the way across all 4 strings, and I'm going to take the pinky and add it to the 5th fret on the A string. I find that to be a much easier D chord. And then the last chord is a C chord. Just going to take my middle finger, place it here on the 3rd fret of the A string. And then when I go back to the G, I just take that finger, move it up to 3, and reapply that bar across the C, E, and A. So this makes it much easier because now if you look at how I'm playing these chords, they're really not that big of changes. And so how we start with this is we don't worry about any sort of strum pattern yet. We just worry about getting comfortable with these chords along with the jam track. So there's going to be a jam track available for download. If you're watching this as a recording, you can check that out, linked below. But it sounds something like this, if I play it. It was made in guitar or in GarageBand on my iPhone. Super fun. But you can hear that it's a jam track through and through. It's got elements of guitar, bass, and drums. So what I'm going to start with doing this is I'm not going to worry about playing the entire chord progression, all that. I'm just going to worry about getting the chords with basic strums. So what I'm doing here is getting comfortable listening and playing the chords. Play them just one at a time. That's totally fine. The whole point to this is to just start developing a little bit of that groove. G, E minor, and you can kind of predict when it comes. D, C, G, E minor, D, C, all right? So that gives us a sound for how this should work with the very basic, what we call harmony, which is just the backdrop, and that's what these chords are. So now we got the left hand down. That's good and comfortable. The hope is that if you can just sit there and play the chords, just one strum on each, you're jamming, you're doing something, and this is the place to start. So if that's challenging, just work on that for a while before moving on to the next part. The next part we're going to introduce is the rhythm. So rhythm is all in our strumming arm. And in the case of this, we have a specific strum pattern that we're going to work on based on the tab. But I want to talk a little bit about how you can kind of arrive at a strum pattern. You see, the trick is you have to know how many beats per measure are being played, in this case 4. And you need to know that that essentially just means that your hand is going to go down and up 8 times, because each down is a beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. With each up being the in-between. We call those ands. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. As long as my hand goes down and up 8 times, and I'm in time with the pulse of the song, I'm going to be doing something correct. So I could just strum down and up the whole time if I wanted to. It sounds something like this. Now, it's not very interesting, but it's right? And this is a great place to start to get comfortable with where those strums should fall. Now the trick is, when you're making a pattern, it's more deciding when you're not going to strike the strings. So you keep your hand moving like this, and you just decide to miss the strings sometimes. And that's how you get things like this. All that I'm doing is sometimes not striking the strings. In the case of the tab here, we have a strum pattern that's very specific that also uses what's called a chunk technique. Now, if you don't know how to chunk, there's a link down below. And what I recommend is if you don't know how to chunk, just substitute a down strum for the chunk for now. It will totally work, but we will use a chunk with this. And the pattern is as follows. It goes down, chunk, up, up, down, up. But as I just said, we can't actually go, down twice or up twice. We have to go in between. So what this means is it's really going to go down, miss, chunk, up, miss, up, down, up. So if we try this a little bit faster, it should sound something like this. Down, miss, chunk, up, miss, up, down, up. Next chord, down, miss, chunk, up, miss, up, down, miss, chunk, up, miss, up, down, miss, chunk, up, miss, up, down, up. Now the speed that I'm playing this at, it's not very fast. It's pretty slow. But that's okay, because we're trying to develop the rhythm and the muscle memory. When we go to play with the jam track, it's going to be pretty fast. So it's important to be able to be comfortable with these motions before you try it. But here's what it sounds like at full speed so that you can hear it. And you can kind of hear how I'll sort of lock into it, right? So at the E minor chord now, D. It's okay to, take a breather and then come in. Now, the most important thing about doing this stuff is if you make a mistake, if you accidentally play a wrong chord like I'm about to right now, just keep the hand moving and just listen and try to come back in. Don't stop your thought process. Don't stop thinking about it and trying to find where you can come back in. Pretty cool, right? Sounds good. So we've got a strum pattern. We've got some chords going with it. We tweaked our chords to make it easier to play. That's all great, but I'm guessing most people aren't watching this because they struggled with playing these chords along with a band. Probably want to do more of the third part, which is melody. Now, melody is sort of the lead line of notes, and usually it's sang by vocalists, but in the case of jamming, it's whoever's taking a solo. And that's something really important to think about. A solo is just an improvised, or in our case, it's not so improvised, melody. That's all a solo is a melody. And the best soloists are not the fastest players usually. They're the best melody interpreters. They can make something sound good and melodic. Ways to make things sound melodic is to make it sound familiar. So make sure you're playing notes that are in the key and with the chords that you're playing. Use repetition, so establish an idea and then reinforce it. And make sure you have lots of space, because space is important. If there's always notes happening, sort of like if we're talking. Imagine if somebody were to start talking to you and not stop, and they didn't take a breath no matter what. They're going to keep going and going and going and never stop, and they just continue to make the point. See what I'm saying? The space is needed to make the point, right? And so let's go ahead and look now at our riff that we're playing here on B of the tab, starting at measure 5. So it's going to start with 2 on the C, but here's the kicker. Don't look at the tab like its own thing. Look at it in relationship to the chords that we were just playing. We're just playing a G chord like this. When we play this here, I want to be playing this 2 on the C with my middle finger, or excuse me, my index finger. I'm going to actually have my middle finger here on 3 on the E. I'm only going to play the 2 on the C, but I'm going to be fretting this all over. And then I'm going to play 4 on the C. So what I do here is I take my ring finger and play sound 4. I'm going to leave everything where it is. Then I'm going to play 3 on the E, and then 2 on the E, or an A, excuse me. And then the pinky is going to stretch out here to 5 on the A. So that's the first riff. And the timing of that is something like this. It goes 1 and 2, 3, 4. Here it is again. 1 and 2, 3, 4. Now the significance of this is 2 things. One is I'm actually starting to make a little bit of a melody that I'm going to repeat in a moment. But the bigger deal is I'm actually playing, 5 notes, and 4 of them are in the chord. This G chord starts with a D, and then it's got the G here and the B here, and this D note's just the same as that. So these notes, the 4th fret on the C string is the only note that's not in that chord. So I'm using that note as what we call a transition note, or a passing tone, as I go between notes of the chord. This is a really important soloing concept, is try to play the notes of the chord more dominantly than notes that aren't in the chord. The reason for that is because it outlines the sort of skeletal feel that the harmony is trying to create. So this sounds really nice with the G chord for that reason. Now we go on to measure 6 here with the E minor. And as I just mentioned before, I wanted to, create some sort of repetition. So I'm going to play the same start there. And guess what? This E note, this 4 on the C, and this G note, the 3 on the E, that's an E and a G. Those are 2 notes of an E minor chord. The last note of the E minor chord is the 2 on the A, the B note. And that's what I play as the end of that measure. So measure 6 goes like this. And that's 1 and 2, 3, 4, right? 1 and 2, 3, 4. So that sound now is the same as the previous one, but outlining the E minor chord. In the chat, somebody just said, my E minor and G sound the same. And this is, I was waiting to answer it here because there's only 1 note different between these 2 chords. So if they sound the same to you, you want to make sure you're getting that C string really well fretted, because that's the only note that changes. So my riffs sort of reflect that as well. There's another key point here, which is I'm using some space. After I play the 2 on the A, I just let it ring for the rest of that bar, right? It goes 1 and 2, 3, 4, right? Just sort of sits there. And that's because it's good to use space. Now, we go on to the next measure, and this one is a doozy, but it's my favorite to play. What it is it starts with a rest. And so this rest is sort of expanding on the space that we were doing before on the E minor chord. Starting a solo or a riff or a line with a rest is a really cool tool. And I love to start with a rest, then go floor it, gas all the way to the floor and just go fast. And that's sort of what happens here. We start with a rest on the count for 1 for this measure 7. And then from here, it's going to do 5/8 notes and a quarter note. So the timing of this is 1, where we do nothing, and then and 2 and 3 and 4 and, where you can see that we're playing on and 2 and 3 and 4. So it goes a little bit quicker. Now the timing of this is pretty tricky. If you're struggling with counting this, we have a great course here at Rock Class 101 where you can look and learn how to read music and decipher these sort of rhythms. And so check that out if you haven't already. But I like to also just listen to try to hear what this rhythm is, where you get that stop on the 1 and then that sound. So how do we play it? Well, what we do here is we're going to take our pinky here on 5 of the A, because our D chord, all these chords are sort of built around these riffs and vice versa. They're all sort of compatible. See, they're all built in, right? Makes it much easier to play. So we start with the 5 on the A with the pinky, and then 3 on the A with the middle finger, and then we're going to do a pull-off to 2 on the A. Now, if pull-offs are tricky for you, you can just play the 2A a second time. But if you want more on pull-offs, we've got something for that too, linked down in the description below. But we do a pull-off there from 3 to 2, and then I'm going to do that again. Play 3, pull-off to 2 again. Then I'm going to take my middle finger and place it here on the 3rd fret of the E string, and leave that there for the last beat. So measure 7 in time, but slowly, should sound something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Pretty cool, right? 1. That pause just sounds so good. So let's hear what it sounds like so far. Measures 5, 6, and 7 should be something like this. 2 and 3 and 4 and... Now we go into measure 8. And measure 8 is both really difficult and really easy. It's really easy because it's only 3 notes, but it's really difficult because of the timing of these notes. But this is my favorite rhythm. I love this sound. What it is I'm going to play the first note on the downbeat of 1. So 1 and 2. And then I'm going to play my second note on the and of 2. So if we count this, it goes 1 and 2 and. And then the last note I'm going to play on 4. This is called the Tresillo rhythm, or the 3 of a 3/2 clave. It's got all these fancy names, but it's really a cool sound. So if I snap on where we should play the notes, it should be 1 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Really cool kind of Latin feel. And it sounds something like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Pretty cool, right? So that we can hear it, let's hear the whole riff in time, nice and slow, going all the way through. Now, if you're playing along and you mess up, that's fine. Just play the notes of the chord. Just try to kind of recover. If you're in doubt, just go back to the chords that we started with at the beginning of the song and kind of strum them. Because what jamming is really about is not perfecting anything, but getting comfortable in the space so that you can make a mistake and recover from it and be able to make something happen. It's really fun. It's what great jammers are, people who can make mistakes and be cool with it, which is why I'm not a great jammer sometimes, because I'll get a little uneasy, but that's okay. That's what we all work on. So here's what it sounds like. Measures 5, 6, 7, and 8 with the riff. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Again. Now, here's what's cool. What if I play it a little bit differently? Well, it's no big deal. The cool thing about this is I wrote out these rhythms in this way because I knew it would sound good. But if you hold a note a little bit longer, as long as you make another one a little bit shorter and you equal those 4 total beats, you're going to be good to go. But let's go ahead and hear what this sounds like now with our jam track. And I'm going to start by playing the chords a bit, then I'll play the riff just so that you can hear how all these parts go. Something really important is to listen to the drums of this and the background. You can really feel a beat going. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. But E minor, we can hear the texture. D, here it gets a little brighter, and C goes down a little bit. Back to the G. Now I'm going to try the riff. Now what's cool is you might have heard I made a mistake when I played with that. And if you heard that mistake that I made, it didn't really sound like one. And that's kind of the point. I was hoping I'd make a mistake because as long as you play notes of the chord, it's going to sound good. It's really critical that we develop that sort of sound of listening to what's being played so that we can play along with it. If I changed up what I did, I could just play the chords. It sounds good because that's the trick to being a really good jammer is being able to listen, being able to play along and to kind of fake it, play the chords and mess around to create those sort of sounds. And so this is how we create this sort of, jam track. And it's really important when you're doing this to know that it's okay to make a mistake and to just listen. So if you make a mistake, if you know you're off, just stop and don't click the restart button. Don't get frustrated. Instead, just listen and then try to just play one chord at a time. Just gain some sort of confidence before we go, and it's a lot of fun. It's super fun. So it looks like there's some people saying that they can't hear the backing track, and that might have something to do with my mic placement with the computer speakers. I'm going to try this again with a little bit more volume, hopefully. You might be able to see my microphone here, just so that we can do that again. But I'm going to go ahead and jam with it. I'm going to use all the concepts that we talked about here today. I'm going to start really simply with my jam. I'm going to go into the strum, then I'm going to solo with the riff. I'm going to make up my own solo, and the solo is just going to be based on the notes of the riff and the chords that are being played. So let's go ahead and try this, and please let me know if you guys can hear this a little bit better. I'll be checking the chat as we go. I'm just using a laptop for the speakers. I wish there was a way to do it all digitally, but who knows. So let's go ahead and hear what this whole thing sounds like now as I pull open the jam track for us to listen to. So here we go. Pretty cool, right? Now let me change the gain on the mic here and everything. I hope you guys could hear that a little bit better. We'll get it down for whenever we do something like this again. But there you have it. That's creating sort of a jam track within, the confines of harmony and rhythm and melody, creating a solo, playing the background. It's all a lot of fun. The best way you can get better with this is practice and failing with the practice so that you can recover from it. If you come from more of an instrumental background, it's very easy to make a mistake and then think, I'm going to play, again. I'm going to start over. But jamming doesn't work that way. Everything is constantly in motion. And so it's really important to be able to listen and recover. Now, if you enjoyed this, I actually, on my YouTube page, if you just type in Matt Dahlberg on YouTube, every month I do a thing called Ukulele Jam Kit, where we actually make one of these every month, and I break it down into 4 different videos to kind of talk about scales and soloing and chord progressions and strum patterns. So check that out if you're interested in more of this. But all of the different resources here on Rock Class 101 really can allow you to become a complete player. So make sure you check out the reading sheet music, music theory course, as well as the things for hammer-ons, pull-offs, chunking, so that you can develop your own sort of sound. So I'm going to open it up for any questions and see if anybody has any questions that go with this jam session. It looks like some people are having some problems with the feed going in and out. I certainly hope that those are isolated. In the event that everyone is having those problems, we will definitely sort those out for the next session. But yeah, any questions at all? Let's go ahead and peruse the chat a little bit. Connie says hi, hello, and Lisa, hi, and RB Ukulele Videos says thank you for not asking us to play the partial D chord. Yeah, no one needs this right now. The way we did it, much better. Ricky said that the G and the E minor sound the same, and so my guess is that your ring finger wasn't quite playing it, because if you don't play your C string, this is a G chord and this is an E minor, or this is a G chord and this is an E minor. Here they sound the same. It's because that C string is the only thing that really makes the sound different. Ricky said that the freezes are instantaneous, so no big problem. So I hope that that's okay. And Connie says that she watches the Ukulele Jam Kit. I appreciate it. They are tons of fun. Ricky says, if you have an unknown backtrack, how do you know what chords to use to jam along? The reality is you don't. You don't know what chords to play and jam along. And this is something that kind of drives me up the wall a little bit, because yes, you can acquire these skills, and some people are kind of born with it and some people aren't. And I'm in the aren't category. I've got a lot of very talented musician friends, and they'll just start playing, and I'm just like, okay, what are we doing here, guys? What key are we in? What should I be playing? It's because everyone perceives music a little bit different, and that's okay. And so what I recommend is, if you are trying to play along with a jam track, is first just find individual notes that sound good. So if you're playing with a chord, like for instance ours here, just find one note that fits with each chord. Because once you find that one note, assuming that it's a basic jam track that's only using 3-note chords, so major, minor chords, you're going to know what that chord is, or at least have a third of the idea. Because if I play this G note, I know that that's going to be either a G chord or an E minor chord. Maybe it's a G minor chord. Maybe it's a C chord. Maybe it's a C minor chord. Right? There are going to be that opportunities for that G note to be present. So if you find one note for each chord, then you find a second note for each chord, you get closer and closer. For instance, in this one, if I play the G and B notes, and I know that sounds good for the first chord, I know that's either going to be a G chord or an E minor chord. And then from there, it's usually easier to kind of hear the difference, because you've identified, most of the texture. I think it's also good to look at, what key is it in? If you know what key the jam track's in, you can use the circle of fifths and fourths to be able to find the chord progression. That takes quite a bit of music theory to understand fully. A lot of people think that, music theory is just this kind of simple thing, but the truth is people make their livelihood studying it and earn doctorates studying it. So there's a lot to look at with it. So the simple answer is try to find notes that work to see if you can identify the chords from that, and that oftentimes will help. And so let's see if there are any other questions here. I'm going to refresh this page, just make sure it's working as I get the audio there. Cool. And thank you guys for making this different time. There have been some scheduling problems with everything that's been going on. My mom watches my son for a lot of these days, and she was unavailable on this Thursday, so we had to move to Tuesday. But it's all good. So any questions at all? Any other questions about jamming, using these jam tracks, or anything else? I'll look for any other questions you guys have. I'm going to just kind of play on the chords and kind of jam out on this a little bit while I'm waiting and looking for these questions. And one thing that you'll notice I'm going to do is, so we talked about rhythm and melody and harmony, and I am a solo player. I don't sing, and honestly, I don't play with people very often. So I like to do it all by myself because that's just what I do. So I'm going to try to do it all by myself. I'm going to actually play the melody, the chords, and the rhythm, to the best of my ability. So it won't be all the parts all the time perfectly, but just so that you can kind of hear how you can jam on it. So. Pretty cool. Now, if you'd like to listen and jam along, we're going to have a play along on Rock Class 101, which will be launching the day after this live lesson aired. So be sure to check that out. But I don't see any other questions, so I'll leave you guys here with this. And if you have any questions, never hesitate to leave a comment down below. We try and check out all those. And I'll look forward to seeing you guys next time for the next live lesson here at Rock Class 101. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you soon. Take it easy.